The devil has no stories of his own. He has no strategy of his own. All he can do is imitate and twist and distort and minimize the one true story, the one great strategy. So all through history, when Satan's power is most manifest, it is when his minions have torn a page out of our playbook at a time when the church has been asleep in the light. Immediately after World War I, a group of communist conspirators in Italy began to put together a plan to overthrow Western civilization and to usher in a new world order. Among these communist conspirators were two remarkable men, Benito Mussolini and Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci was a brilliant intellectual who pioneered the Avanti conspiracy in 1920 and eventually went to Moscow to study with Stalin and Trotsky. Their vision was to overthrow everything that is right and good and true in Western civilization. Now, the problem with the Marxists was that they had been at this since Marx and Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848 and unleashed a string of Marxist revolutions that spread all across Europe and into South America. And every single one of those revolutions failed. They put up barricades in the streets, they stormed buildings, they burned down cities. Sound familiar? But their conspiracies failed. On the heels of that, there were a whole series of other Marxist revolutions. They included revolutions in France, in Austria, across South America, throughout Italy, and every single one of them failed. So Antonio Gramsci began to think. He studied Marx's Das Kapital, the three great volumes of Marxist economics, and realized, first, no one can understand any of this. Two, none of it makes sense. And three, it will never work. But his mission remained the same: overthrow Christianity, destroy the foundations of Western freedom and Western civilization, and usher in a new age. He said, I hate the indifferent. I believe that living necessarily means taking sides. Indifference and apathy are but persuasive perversions. And thus, indifference is the dead weight of history. We must unlock the gates of hell. He also said, the old world is dying. The new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters. Let us imagine what can be unburdened by what has been. Antonio Gramsci, 1931, the father of cultural Marxism. At about the same time that he was beginning to formulate this vision for how to take the reins of Western civilization and transform the world, another group of scholars was gathering in the city of Frankfurt. as Gramsci was writing, eventually from prison, because Mussolini put into prison all of his rivals, that they began to read these ideas and formed at Goethe University in Frankfurt something called the Frankfurt School. They were rivals to a whole host of other German socialist movements, the German Workers' Party and eventually the National Socialist Party, all springing up out of Marxist ideas. But because most of the members of the Frankfurt School were Jewish, they were most assuredly astonished at the direction that National Socialism was going. So they were a rival socialism. And they began to develop what they called the strategy of the robes. The strategy of the robes, developed by Wilhelm Reich and Herbert Marcuse, that was a very simple plan. Capture the robes of authority in a culture, and in a generation, you will have the whole culture. The strategy of the robes, therefore, targeted the robes of the judiciary, the robes of academia, the robes of science, and even the robes of the church. Their idea was, well, if we can capture the robes, then in one generation, we will have the culture. Now, their plan was interrupted by the rise of the National Socialists, and they fled. You know where they fled? To the United States. They came to Columbia University. And there, with the patronage of John Dewey, they became leading lights in American academia. Marcuse eventually went to California and became the father of the free love movement of the 1960s. But all along the way, they were inculcating this notion. Let's capture the universities. Let's capture the research institutes. Let's capture the large corporations. Let's capture the judiciary. Let's capture the media. Let's capture Hollywood. And we will control the whole of the culture. They planned it. They developed it. They worked on it for 2 generations, and we were not paying attention. In the meantime, this vision of a kind of multi-generational succession, what we might call evangelism and discipleship, a plan torn right out of our playbook, but they were putting to full effect. And we are seeing the results to this day.